The converted man here. A wise man once pontificated on the question of how many fallacies can a single person produce? That wise man was me. But an even wiser woman once asked, "How you doing, Bernie?" To which a wise man answered, "Oy vey, oy vey." And she asked again, "How you doing, Bernie?" He said, "Oy vey, oy vey." He said, "Mecca, Mecca, hi, Mecca, shiny ho." Anyway, so how about you? Have you seen this Jew? He reads the Torah and does his own accounting too. He works like a slob at the synagogue. He's there all day. I'm telling you, he's there all day. Anyways, I don't know. That just came in my mind. Let's look at this video and analyze it for logical fallacies, shall we? Oops. Here it is. All right, here we go. It's here somewhere. There we go. The atheist dare destroy by the end of Abraham. How much evidence is enough? Richard Dawkins is famous for demanding evidence from believers, but he opened evidence himself with all too revealing interview with Peter Pope. Anyways, what evidence would convince you of God's existence? That is the question that he wants me to answer, I guess, because it's in his description. You see, I showed you. It was right here. It was right here. See, it's down there. So, yeah, I'm not gonna zoom in. Yeah, you can zoom in. You know, I'm tired of zooming in. All right. $1 trillion tax-free that wouldn't harm the economy in any way, shape, or form in my account would be good. Or actually, hold on. What's the world's debt? The world's debt. Okay. I would like 324 trillion in my bank account that would all be legal tender and and tax free, and it wouldn't harm the economy for me to just gain that amount. With that amount, I could retire the world's money owed by governments and still have $1 trillion left over. So 324 trillion, because it's about 323 trillion is owed by the entire governments of the world. So if I was to somehow all of a sudden, just gain that much money, that would convince me of God. Yeah, that would do it. So pray to your God and ask that I get that amount of money. And as soon as I do, I'll believe in whatever God that was. You'll have to tell me though, because just getting that. Maybe you could put like a little note, like from the God fill in the blank, like the God Yahweh or the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or whatever, just to let me know, so I wouldn't believe in the wrong God. Also, I guess the money would be coming from an unknown account, and it's like we can't trace it down. We don't know who sent this. Hey, there's enough searches out there to raise that sort of money, right? Maybe. I don't know. It's a lot of money, though. Anyway, so yeah, back to this video, though. Actually, let's start the video, because I'm not even back to it yet, because I haven't even started it yet. So here we go.
They told us life would be better if we replaced faith with reason, that we should never accept a claim without evidence. But what if they never really meant it? Now that our societies cast aside faith, are we actually happier, better off? Or do we find ourselves in a kind of clown world, where confusion reigns, where our leaders divide us by race, politics, and culture?
Those two things are disconnected from each other. The happiness and or lack thereof is completely independent of whether any given system is true or not, and whether any given system is of any use or not. I think our leaders have always done this, broadly speaking. Those in power have always divided us by these things whenever they felt that they could do it, or we ourselves divide ourselves in this way. And that doesn't prove anything. It's been this way for a long, long time. And religion hasn't solved that problem. And maybe secularism hasn't solved it either. Although maybe humanism might. I don't know. We haven't really tried humanism on a wide scale yet. Most people that accept this philosophy, there's not that many of them. Now, I don't really consider myself a humanist per se, and I'm not really sure what the philosophy is. I suppose that it would be nice if the governments of the world would, try to unite us. And if we ourselves also said, hey, let's all unite, that would be cool. But one thing standing in our way is, well, people's view of reality. If your view of reality encompasses a deity and mine encompasses a different deity, that might be fine, or it might cause friction. If my deity says to kill everybody that wears hats on Friday, but your deity says to wear hats on Friday, then I'm going to have to go and try to kill you. Whether or not I want to is irrelevant. That's what my deity told me to do. And the idea that we must obey our deity or God is ingrained in many religions. So many religions will have you go kill in the name of God. And for Judaism, for example, God apparently told the Israelites to go kill people for certain land that God had promised them. Why God didn't remove those people itself, well, I don't know. But from my perspective as a skeptic, I think it's more likely that the Israelites simply used God as a justification for going to war. Holy wars are, a dime a dozen, if you will, in history. And there's been plenty of religions that have done them. So it doesn't surprise me that the Jewish people performed them in their past. They paint it as they were the oppressed rather than the oppressors, but they broadly won those battles and took that land. But whatever, the victor gets to write the account of, the history that they want to some extent. Because the loser is usually very dead. So certainly the people at the time of the Bible's writings were not against doing what they thought God told them to do, to go kill a whole bunch of people. In fact, outright genocide was commanded, apparently, by God. Kill all the men, women, and children. Leave nothing. In fact, sometimes the whole city was burnt down. And that seems a bit extreme, but if God's telling you to do it, then it makes it okay. Unless, of course, it's a different God that's not the real God, then it's wrong. I'm sure glad that nobody today goes around killing in the name of God. Wait, what's that? Oh, right. Islam still does that. Yeah, that's not good. And I'm glad that by and large, fewer and fewer religions are killing in the name of God. But yeah, it's still a problem that they could, or that they might, or that somebody could do that. If somebody believes that something told them to kill somebody else, and that something is an unquestionable God, that is a problem that we're going to have as people trying to live together. And that problem will create a necessary separation between you and I. The person that is trying to kill must be separated from society in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's by exile or execution or imprisonment, I don't know. But they have to be, because they're trying to kill people. And if they succeeded in killing people, well, then again, they have to be removed from society in some way, shape, or form. And to do otherwise would not be good for society. Maybe we could figure out a technological solution for this, like messing with their brains so that they never want to kill again. But there's other problems that come with that idea. With every solution, there are always going to be other problems that crop up. Regardless, we try our best as humans to get along, and religion can get in the way of that and often does get in the way of that, let alone our governments and ourselves. So, if we are to truly unify as a species, we're going to have to leave behind prejudices that are inflicted upon us by those in power and also religion. And also, I would think that that means the greatest thing in power, God. Whatever God said, if it said anything at all, if it's an authority, rejecting it, well, what would be the harm? It's not going to do anything to us. Hasn't yet. I don't think it's going to. Maybe you could say it's going to punish us later, but I see no evidence of that. And I don't see any evidence of it punishing us now. So I think we're better off, broadly speaking, without the belief of God dragging us down. At least beliefs in gods that are unquestionable gods, ones that force its believers and adherents to it to do certain actions that they might not want to do. Any god that has a negative effect upon society would be one that, if we want to make society a good one, we'd have to get rid of. We'd have to get rid of the belief, not the people that hold it, because people are valuable.
And where the elites can't even define what a woman is.
This is a ginormous red herring. It has nothing to do with whether there's is or isn't a God, or whether atheism is or isn't correct, or it has nothing to do with anything at all. But he's using this as an example of something that he thinks shows the world is in some sort of disorder. I personally would like it if people could define words, which is funny since this guy doesn't appear to understand a word coming up here, but you'll see that when it hits, and I'll remind you of the funniness of this. Regardless, it is not difficult to define man or woman, and whether you're a leader or not, you should be able to do this. There are two definitions of these words now. I at least used to think and believe and was told, or I don't know, just thought that man was biological, and the whole gender thing I thought was just, I didn't even think much about it. And it took me a while to get a grasp on this evolution of language, that biology and gender are separate components. Now, when I was growing up, we had tomboys, and I guess that's still a thing that's still around. We recognize that girls that behave as boys are tomboys. Well, what is it that the girl is doing that makes her a boy? Well, climbing trees or playing baseball or being rough and tough, activities that normally boys do. But when a boy acts like a girl, he gets the privilege of getting an insult like sissy boy. Wow, that there's no equivalent for the boy like there is the girl. Like why? Well, I don't know. Being a man is better than being a woman? Is that what is going on there? Is that what's being implied by this? But regardless, certainly we did recognize that some boys acted like girls and some girls acted like boys. And for some people, acting is not just for a limited time, but it is all the time. And it isn't even an act, it is their entire being is that. And so a boy who is acting like a girl may indeed feel that he is not a he and he should be called a she, and because he wants to be a girl. And he doesn't want to be insulted with sissy boy, he wants to be called girl or woman or whatever. And hey, yeah, who wants to be insulted? Nobody wants to be insulted. And whether or not you insult somebody, that's on you. That's a you problem. Whether you accept the evolution of language or not, that's also a you problem. And whether or not leaders are stupid or not, well, that's an us problem, broadly speaking. We need better leaders, but what are you going to do about that? But yes, there are two definitions for the word man and woman now. And it can be summarized as that the biological man is based on, well, biology, what's inside your body, broadly speaking. And that the gender, well, that's social agreements on what it is to be a man or woman, which will change over time. However, slightly that does change. And, women used to wear skirts, now they don't as much, that kind of thing. So, a man wearing a skirt, is he behaving like a girl? Yeah, kind of. So, is he a girl? If he wants to be, sure, whatever. It doesn't hurt me at all. Anyways, but it's a giant red herring. It has nothing to do with anything other than being as an attempt to prove that society has lost its collective mind. It could just be that you don't understand the changes of society, and these leaders are also struggling to understand those changes as well, and or that we need new leaders, but this has nothing to do with secularism or anything else.
What is a woman? What is a woman is the question.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So, did they ever mean it, these skeptics who claim?
Now, I don't know that senator is a skeptic. So are you saying here is an example of one person who might not be a skeptic, not knowing the definition of word, therefore equals all skeptics must not know the definition of that word, even though I, as a skeptic, have provided you with the definition of the word? I mean, that would be pretty faulty logic, wouldn't it? Oh, in fact, it would be hasty generalization.
Claimed to worship science and reason? Or was it never about reason at all? Maybe they just hated God. In his
Talk about poisoning of the well. Also, this guy is Jewish. Shouldn't he be saying GD? They're not allowed to say or write God. Maybe he's a Reformed Jewish person. I don't know. He mentioned the Talmud in the comments, and also he's the Inn of Abraham. So I'm assuming that he's Jewish. I could be wrong. Oi. By the way, I'm allowed to say, like, I'm not going to anti-Semitic things, but I am allowed to kind of poke fun at it a little because my brother is Jewish. Probably not okay to poke at it anyways, just to be safe, because I don't want to be canceled. I'm not going to make fun of Judaism. Well, yes, no, I'm not. Okay, no, I almost thought like, oh, I could do this, and no. Bad idea, deconverted man. Bad idea. Anyways, what was I talking about? Oh, right, this guy being wrong, logically speaking.
2006 documentary, The Root of All Evil, atheist biologist Richard Dawkins travels the world, interviewing the most extreme and offensive religious figures he can find, comparing believers to animals.
This is a benign herd. In reality, they're probably more likely to catch something from the thousands of other pilgrims who've wallowed in the same water.
Oh, did he hurt your feelings? Oh, I'm so sorry. Wah, wah. Anyways, doesn't the Bible compare believers to sheep and shepherds and stuff like that? Well, maybe that's the New Testament. I don't remember what the Old Testament says, or the Torah, or the Talmud, for that example. But we are animals. So what? Get over it. And however Dawkins presents whatever, who cares? That's one dude. I don't understand why some apologists treat Dawkins like he's the Pope of atheism or something. I don't care what Dawkins says. If you wanted to go against Dawkins, then your video should be Dawkins destroyed or Richard Dawkins dismantled, not atheist dare destroyed. I don't even know what atheist dare you're talking about, by the way, because you never framed that and you're never going to. But the video name just doesn't make any sense, is what I'm getting at.
And venting his hatred of religion.
But isn't this the beginning of that slippery slope that leads to young men with rucksack bombs on the tube?
Again and again, he demands evidence for religious belief, praising science for its commitment to evidence.
Evidence, 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 evidence,
Evidence, evidence,
Yeah.
evidence,
Yeah.
evidence of evidence, evidence,
evidence, evidence, evidence,
evidence, evidence,
evidence, evidence,
evidence, evidence.
And yet,
I like the part when he said evidence. If this wasn't like, I don't know what the point of this is, but repetition isn't an argument. You know? Don't you hate it when people repeat stuff over and over again? It gets really annoying. You know, it's like when people repeat stuff over and over again, it just really gets annoying. You know what I'm saying? Like when people repeat stuff over and over again, it just gets. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, he wants evidence. Okay, give us the evidence of your God then.
yet, not once in the entire 90-minute film does Dawkins define what he means by evidence.
What? You want a definition of a word? When you were complaining earlier, this guy doesn't know the definition of a word. He didn't know how to define the word woman over here. Dawkins didn't define it, but presumably you understand what the word means, but you're complaining that he didn't define a word that should be something that you understand. Weird. Oh, well. Anyways, that's not like a logical fallacy. I just thought it was interesting to point out and laugh at. Anyways.
I was trained as a lawyer, so I define evidence in much the
You were trained as a lawyer is a weird way to put it. Do you mean you went to law school and learned how to be a lawyer? Or does someone like train you to be a lawyer? Like, why would you say it like that? It's a really weird way to say it. Oh, well, whatever. Okay, so you know law stuff, I guess. Are you an actual lawyer, or did you just take some law school? Like, are you a paralegal? I don't know. Anyways, this is how you defined evidence. So you did know what the word evidence is, at least one version of the word evidence. So, yeah, and you present this. Okay. Evidence is relevant if it has tendency to make fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence, and the fact or consequence of determining the action. That's the test for relevant evidence, apparently. So, okay, cool. Do you have that for your God? I would like to see that for your God. And since you said that you know law, I did post a challenge. And that challenge would be a mock courtroom. God is being accused of existing. Now, of course, in court, you are presumed innocent until guilt is proven. So God is innocent of existing, and I'm willing to defend that. That makes you the prosecutor. You now have to convince a jury that God is guilty. And if you're unable to do so, you lose your case, I win. Now, it'd be really weird when I call God to the stand. I'm not sure what's going to happen then. But I'm definitely going to do it if you agree to this. But I don't think you will. All right. Also, I'm not sure what the pure group of God would be that we would need as the jurors. But we can figure that out.
the same way the federal rules of evidence defines it. Any information, whether sensory, testimonial, or physical, that makes the claim we're discussing more likely or less likely. We'll go into that in more detail in another video. But here, I want to
Why?
ask
Wait,
a
wait, wait,
simple
wait, wait, wait,
question.
wait, 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 wait,
Does-
whoa, 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 whoa! Why not do it now? Seems relevant. Oh well, whatever. I guess it was all irrelevant. Yeah, whatever.
Does Richard Dawkins actually care about evidence? If this sounds harsh, consider this 2013 interview he gave.
I mean, I don't care if he does or doesn't care about evidence. It seems like he does care quite passionately about evidence. But who cares if he doesn't? Then your video should be Richard Dawkins doesn't care about evidence or something like that. But that wouldn't get my view or anyone else's view. So you gotta lie about it. I mean, clickbait title it and make pretend like it's about atheists in general rather than one single person that is an atheist. You're free to debunk Dawkins all you want, but this doesn't apply to me or any other atheist. And until you show that it does, your video title is incorrect. There is no dare, first of all, and nothing got destroyed here. Whether Dawkins cares about evidence or not is irrelevant. Do you have it? And if so, present it. That's all. Doesn't matter if he doesn't care about it. Who cares? Just give us the evidence, whatever that is, whatever you think it is. And we'll tell you whether or not we accept it or not, and why we would or wouldn't accept it. I also posed a challenge to this guy that I'm sure you won't answer in asking him what evidence of a different God would convince him, or would any? Because after all, couldn't he just say that that was actually a test from the real God? Maybe he would never accept evidence of any other God except for the God that he believes in. Couldn't that be possible? Or would he accept evidence that shows that his God isn't or can't be due to logic, reason, or history itself? I don't know. People are weird about their beliefs. What's important is the argument, not whether someone cares or doesn't care. It would be great if we all cared about evidence. I care about evidence, and I will certainly accept evidence of God. Like I said, 374.5 trillion. Let's just round it up. $400 trillion in my bank account. That would do it. I would believe in God as soon as I got $800 trillion. If you're wondering why it goes up, it's because I'm greedy.
With Peter Boghossian at the Portland State University. In this short clip, Dawkins uses what I call the root of all fallacies. See if you can spot it. But more than that, watch how his commitment to atheism short-circuits his thinking and stunts his imagination.
There you go again. His commitment to atheism short circuits, blah, blah, blah. And that's kind of poisoning the well a little bit, don't you think? I mean, it's muddying the waters, if nothing else. Maybe not outright poisoning the water or the well, but definitely muddying the waters. What he does as a single atheist does not apply to any other atheist. It doesn't apply to me, certainly. My commitment to atheism, or his commitment to atheism, I don't know that he's committed to it. That sounds like it's something that he, I don't know, it just sounds weird. I'm not committed to anything. I'm a skeptic. I will accept any empirical evidence, any repeatable test, or any valid and sound argument that you have for whatever it is, including God. And if you want to go your route and present the sort of evidence that you outlined in your video, sure, I'll be happy to do a mock trial with you. But I don't think you'll do it or agree to it because I think you know that you would lose. I could be wrong about that. Let's accept my challenge and see who's right or wrong. Unless you're a really bad lawyer. That could always be the case.
The question he's asking is what God could do to prove his existence to him. He can't think of one thing. But if he had really allowed himself to imagine the possibilities, he might have found such a way.
So what? Matt Dillahunty has an interesting answer that you might say is a non-answer. His answer is that God would know whatever it is to convince him. Because Matt Dillahunty is trying to be honest and saying he's not sure what would convince him. And that's an honest position. It's not my position. Like I said, $12,000 trillion in my bank account that's completely legal, non-taxed, and wouldn't hurt the economy or whatever, so I can pay off the world's, deficits and still have a good nest egg. I don't know that I would need that much money, though, to be honest. I think 1 trillion would be more than, heck, a billion would be more than, $1 million would be enough. I wouldn't need a trillion, but I kind of want to be a little greedy, and God can afford it, I think. So, it's God. He can do anything. That would convince me, But other than that, maybe that's silly. I got a different one God could do. Make this thing fly off of my head, right up into the air, and hover there for a while. But not while I'm alone or not recording. It would have to be when everyone can see it. And it'd have to be around multiple people and being recorded by multiple people. And it'd have to be on command every time. That would be a repeatable test we could do to show that God exists. All right, God's not going to do that either. All right, how about something a little bit easier? I've got a scar here on my arm. Probably can't really see it that well. And I'm also missing teeth. You may or may not have noticed. And if you did notice, thanks for not pointing it out. So God could fix that scar or regrow my teeth. That would convince me. But God doesn't do that, apparently. So what could God do to convince a skeptic? Well, appearing to all the world at the same time in a way that would convey its message to all of us that we would understand and comprehend. Just be there. Be visible. Something we can see, interact with, talk to, and receive communication from. That would be pretty convincing. Maybe it could be an alien, but whatever. If it wants to be called God, it's God. I don't care. If it possesses qualities that I think are God, it's good enough for me. And maybe deep down I don't really believe it's God, but if it knows what I'm thinking, it would know that and be like, hey, deconverted man, you don't believe I'm God. I'm like, that's cool. You know that. Yeah, I do. And it probably wouldn't care, because why would it care if I didn't believe it? And it could do something that would convince me, because it would know what that is if it wanted to. But apparently God doesn't want to reveal itself to all of humanity at the same time in a way that would convince us all that it exists. And I guess a few of us might be like, oh, it's a government conspiracy, or it's a hallucination, or whatever, Or some people would think that it's actually a false God because it's not their version of God. So if a different version of God does appear to all of mankind in a way that we just can't deny it, but it wasn't your God, would you be convinced that it was God, or would you never be convinced that it's God because you're committed to a belief in a particular type of God? That is a question only you can answer honestly yourself, but the answer to that has no bearing on whether or not your argument has any substance to it. So far, your argument has no substance to it because it's directed at Dawkins, not atheists. And even then, you're not doing a very good job.
What could that way be? Well, let's watch the clip and see if we can come up with the same answer I did.
What would it take for you to believe in God?
Well, I used to say it would be very simple. It would be, the second coming of Jesus, or a great big, deep, booming bass Paul Robeson voice saying, "I am God and I created." But I was persuaded mostly by actually Steve Zara, who's a regular contributor to my website, richarddawkins.net. He more or less persuaded me that even if there was this booming voice and the second coming in clouds of glory, The more probable explanation is that it's a hallucination or a conjuring trick by David Copperfield or something. I mean, he made the point that a supernatural explanation for anything is incoherent, that it just doesn't sort of, it doesn't add up to an explanation for anything. A non-supernatural second coming could be aliens from outer space. I mean, a superhuman, but not supernatural of that
So,
sort.
so that couldn't be enough. So what would persuade you?
Well, I'm starting.
What would persuade you?
Well, I'm starting to think nothing would, which in a way goes against the grain, because I've always paid lip service to the view that a scientist should change his mind when evidence is forthcoming. The trouble is, I can't think what that evidence would look like.
Is there something that exists or happens beyond the rules of the natural world? Something not explainable by science or by physical causes? Something that's outside of time, outside of space, and that's not matter or energy? Richard Dawkins has decided the answer is no, and that there's nothing he could witness that would persuade him otherwise.
It's kind of a straw man of what he said. Like, he was kind of having fun with it, and obviously the audience was having fun with what he was saying. And Dawkins was trying to be honest. He's like, I don't know, like this and that could be something else. So that one convinced me. I don't know, maybe nothing will. He's just being honest. He's like, I really don't know. But God would know. But something could convince him, potentially. Maybe. And maybe he just hasn't thought of it. So what? Like I said, for me, that's not the case. I gave you several different things that could convince me that God exists, but I'm sure that as a believer, you will tell me that God doesn't do those things. He doesn't heal scars, doesn't regrow teeth, doesn't levitate lobsters off of heads, and doesn't deposit $18,000 trillion in my bank account. Pretty sure that went higher than last time. Why? I don't know, but God doesn't do that thing. Also, God won't reveal itself to all of humanity until the last days because reasons. So, whatever God could do to prove itself to all of us, and it would have to be more than just me, by the way, because proving it to just me, that's not going to cut it. It's going to need to be provable to more than just me, or it doesn't count. Because, see, we share reality together. When I hold up the lobster, even though it's a stuffed toy, well, we recognize it as a lobster equivalent, and we both know it exists. We don't have to debate about it. It's just there. The end. So, poof. Hey, God, how's it going? Hey, Digger, what's up? What's up? But God doesn't do that. And you've probably got lots of reasons why God doesn't do that. And I'm just like, well, how do you know anything about God? How do you know what God is? What method did you use to determine that? And again, go with your version of evidence. I don't care. Present what there is to present me. Maybe you'll convince me. Maybe not. But maybe you should listen to feedback that people give you if they're not convinced and why they're not convinced. And think about ways to improve your argument rather than recycle the same old garbage that isn't going to work. And by garbage, I mean flawed argument like the one that you're producing. This is nothing more than a straw man and cherry picking and using Dawkins as a representation of atheism when he just isn't.
He's wrong on both counts, but he's also revealing something very important about himself and about those like him, whose attacks on faith have had such a massive impact on our culture.
There he goes. So then those like him. So he's extrapolating from one person to an entire group. There's a word for that. Bigotry. If I extract that all Jewish people are like you, I might have a very low view of Jewish people. Luckily, I know that doing so is illogical to do because it's hasty generalization, as well as being a social faux pas. Just because you might be bald or balding doesn't mean that every Jewish is bald or balding, although my brother is kind of going bald. But my brother's pretty tall, so that must mean that all Jewish people are really tall, right? No. Okay. Well, my brother's a kind of cool guy, even though I insult him by calling him a nerd whenever I can, because I can't call him cool because I'm the younger brother. It's my job to call him a nerd and poke at him and tease him and mercilessly torture him. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, right. So that must mean that other Jewish people are that way too. But again, even if it's positive, it's still a hasty generalization. Because one person does it doesn't mean that the rest do. Don't do that, dude. You should know better.
They told us they were open to evidence, that all they were doing was shifting the burden of proof, asking us, the faithful, to back up our claims. But now we learn that there is nothing that we could say or do, indeed nothing God himself could say or do, that would satisfy that burden. It really seems that Dawkins' demands for evidence in this documentary were just a cloud of squid ink, meant to distract, not to uncover truth. His questions weren't asked in a search for answers. They were asked to humiliate, to undermine, to dominate. This is not how one acts when engaged in a search for truth. That might make
That's some wide sweeping generalizations you're doing without any foundational support to them. As such, they must be dismissed. I think you're just saying stuff. You're not actually arguing and showing that any of this stuff is true. You might believe this stuff, but we need a sound argument to agree with you, and you don't have that.
for compelling television, but it shatters the illusion that his rejection of faith is grounded in reason. When it comes to the question of whether anything exists beyond nature, science simply isn't the right tool.
Well, how do you know that? Well, that is to say, how do you know that there's anything beyond nature, first of all, and that secondly, science isn't the right tool? If you think science can only observe what is natural, that may or may not be the correct assumption to make. Maybe we can figure out ways to explore non-natural things. I'm not sure what that would look like, but maybe you can propose some way that we could do that. And if you don't have any methodology for studying non-natural, whatever that is, why should we think that non-natural is anything more than an idea that we humans came up with? If it's an idea, well, we can study that it's an idea. We can study the ideas to some degree, but we can't show that they're anything more than ideas. So, in this sense, if God is just an idea and you applied science to it, you would discover that God is just an idea. So, science certainly could be used to discover what God isn't, in that God isn't a thing beyond just an idea, or that God is just an idea. Science could be utilized to find these things to be true and show ample support for it. Some believers say that God is supernatural or non-natural or non-physical or whatever. Okay, cool. And science apparently doesn't test those things. Okay, fine. I'm not sure that it can't or won't, but whatever. Well, then how do we know that they're things at all? You might as well say magic, because that's what you're talking about. If you're talking about a realm that is untestable, then by its nature, we can't know anything about it because it's untestable. In fact, we couldn't even know that it was untestable. We couldn't know that it was a realm. So if we can't test it or verify it in some way, shape, or form, if we have no methodology in regards to it, then the category that it is belongs in the category of ideas, not reality. And that's the difference between skepticism and belief, at least one of the many differences.
I define science as a method for formulating explanations of nature by testing hypotheses about some aspect of the natural world and how it works. But I can't help notice that many of those who've mastered the methods and knowledge of science have come to believe that science is the right tool for making any decision. And I have a
Really? Where do you get that idea from? I mean, has anyone said that? Science is a pretty dang good methodology for figuring out stuff. But I think a lot of philosophers don't like that science is so darn good. They well, yeah, but you can't use it on fill in the blank. And then guess what? It turns out we can use it on that. Like everything that I've ever heard any philosopher say that science can't be used on, we can use it on that. So if you got something equivalent or better, please present that methodology. It would benefit the world greatly. But maybe there's something that we can't use science on. I don't know what that is, but that still means that science is the best methodology available to us, and that there's some other methodology that's not as good for that thing, whatever that thing is. Unless, again, you can prove that you have a better methodology. Can you? Love to hear from you. Hello? No? Okay.
a sneaking suspicion why. They want to be the ones who get called in when it's time to make a decision, which explains why they're so committed to the belief that there's nothing outside of nature. Because if there is,
That's a huge assumption to make, that we are committed to believing that there's nothing outside nature. No, I'm a localized naturalist and materialist. That is to say, in my local field of view and knowledge, I don't know of anything that isn't natural or material. Everything is those things that I'm aware of. That doesn't mean that I'm against there being the possibility of other things. Sure. But you need to demonstrate that those things exist, not just say that they do. Without some methodology, you can't demonstrate. If you can't demonstrate, then I'm going to have to think that it's just an idea that you came up with or that other people came up with. There's many ideas that we have that aren't really real in a sense. In a way, you can think about numbers, for example. Now, they're called constructs, they're called objects of the mind. An object of the mind exists in our brain, but not out here. I mean, we can write the number 1 down, but it's not anything. It's just an expression of an idea that we're having. You can't go and pick the number 1 off of a tree and eat it. And if you did, I wonder what it would taste like. Probably chicken or the number 1. So the number 1 is a object of the mind only. And if there was no mind, then the number 1 wouldn't be. But if a tree fell in the woods and nobody was around, it would still make a sound. And there'd still be 1 tree. There'd just be nobody around to label it as 1 tree. Or as anything at all, because you need people to label stuff. Now, the abstract objects of the mind, like letters, numbers, words, etc., in that category, I propose God fits. God has all the attributes that objects of the mind have. You cannot tangibly summon it. You cannot, although it does have other attributes that are not like objects of the mind, but you can't verify it empirically or test it. That doesn't apply to other objects of the mind, but it does apply to few. The concept house, for example. You can't draw a house. Go ahead, try. No. What you just drew is a particular type of house. That's not what I said to draw. I said to draw house. The doctor house. No. The concept house is a universal. We can't draw it. It's impossible. Like you can't draw a triangle. You can only draw particular triangles. Triangle. Well, yeah, but the concept triangle, you can't draw it because it's just a concept. It's an object of the mind, and it only exists here, nowhere else. God seems to exist here and nowhere else. And if it does exist somewhere else, great. Then, well, we need something to verify that. Evidence, or some method, something. We need something to go on. And all you're doing here is saying, it wouldn't matter even if I gave it to Dawkins. Well, screw Dawkins. Give it to me. But I suspect that your only evidence isn't evidence. If your evidence is a book that somebody wrote, that's not evidence. Not going to cut it. Not for this claim.
Is something outside of nature, they'd be just as powerless to explain or interpret it as the rest of us. And then, how could they claim to be our best advisors? Look what's happened over the past few decades when we trusted them. Even if someone could honestly conclude that there is nothing outside of nature, let's take a closer look at how Dawkins uses the root of all fallacies to sweep away any possible evidence of the existence of God: hallucination. Now, why do I call Dawkins's hallucination dodge an example of the root of all fallacies? The way he uses it reminds me of something that bakers say about all-purpose flour. If a flour can be used for all purposes, it's no good for any purpose. If you want great bread, you use bread flour. Great cake? Cake flour. All-purpose flour isn't good for either of them. The same goes for arguments. If an argument can be used to prove or reject any claim, then it doesn't actually work for any argument.
That's actually the smartest thing you've said this entire video. But there's a different way to look at it. If your argument has logical fallacies, then it's a bad argument and shouldn't be used at all. But yes, if we can use a similar argument for different things, then the use of that argument could be questionable, but it might not be invalid. It depends on the argument, which is why my framing is better, because I actually am using formal logic, whereas your framing was, well, it's still the smartest thing that you said. It's just, I'm smarter in the sense of the thing with logic, not smarter in general. It's just like I know more, I think, probably about this topic. Maybe. I don't know. I could be wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Back to the video.
It might sound persuasive, but when we think about it, we realize it's just a tool for shutting down thought. That gets me to why I call it the root of all fallacies. In freshman critical thinking classes, you might have been given a long list of logical fallacies you're supposed to avoid. These lists can be useful, but they don't cut to the heart of the matter. Maybe we'll go into more detail about what I'm talking about in a future video, but
do people get a list of logical fallacies? Because if so, then we're doing something wrong. Just a list of logical fallacies doesn't tell you anything. You need to actually know what informal logic is and how it functions in order to make use of those logical fallacies. It does you no good to know the fallacies without knowing the underlying structure of an argumentation or how to make one. If we're teaching that in school, we suck. But since he's said everything that's wrong already, I doubt that we're teaching this in school at all. Maybe if you take a course in logic, yes, but I don't think it would just be a list of logical fallacies. There are lists of logical fallacies, though, available online, and some of them are quite long. There's like 1,000 some odd. But they're really just variants of a key few, really, in most cases. But the thing is, if you have a bad argument, which means you have an argument that contains a fallacy, then using informal logic, you're forced to say that the conclusion is one that you're skeptical of. That means that you set the conclusion aside and say, go fix your argument, come back when you have a working argument. which is basically what I'm saying to you, sir. Your argument is broken. Go fix it. Come back when you have a working one. Because right now, you've had plenty of fallacies. Straw man, cherry picking, hasty generalization, muddying the waters, potentially poisoning of the well. And it just isn't looking good for you. Your argument isn't even really an argument anymore. It just fell apart. I guess you were trying to make some point about Dawkins, and then you were extrapolating that point to everybody else, which isn't fair because that's hasty generalization and it's, well, bad logic. So don't do that. But I guess you're saying that there's some other underlying point, but we'll see that in a different video. I'm not going to watch that video. You should have made the point now. I mean, you're going off of another tangent, so why not? Oh, well.
Here's the core idea. There's only one logical fallacy, and it's this. An argument is weak and manipulative to the extent that it is arbitrary.
No, you're wrong. There are many, many fallacies, and that isn't one of them. You don't get to just sweep aside logic like that. That's not how things work, buddy. Anyways, but yeah, whatever. I mean, you want to introduce a logical fallacy. Well, I would love to do that myself. I don't know how, though. So, yeah, all right, whatever.
Dawkins's hallucination dodge can be used to dismiss any possible evidence for.
Yes, we get it. Okay, so what evidence do you have then? Just present the evidence. Forget about Dawkins. Give this the evidence. When I was a Christian, I believed that we had evidence. Oh, yeah, I did. Then I looked into it. Oops, we don't. So that was it. I was done. I was told by a different Christian, oh, we have the evidence, but even if we give it to them, they won't believe it. I thought that was silly. Just give it to them. Then, if they don't believe it, at least we gave it to them. You, sir, seem to be in that stance of, yeah, we have evidence. Sure, we have it. We have evidence. Okay, cool. Next video. Not this video, next video. How about just give me the evidence? But I already know that the evidence you're going to give me isn't going to be evidence, not even the version of evidence that you referenced. How do I know that? I've been doing this a while.
For any possible claim. You can hallucinate about anything, which means that his hallucination gambit can be applied to every argument. Let's test that. Let's see how well Dawkins's hallucination dodge holds up when used on evidence for evolution.
Darwin's theory of evolution is the best supported theory in all of science.
No, it isn't.
There's plenty of proof of evolution. There are fossils.
Fossils? There's no such thing as fossils.
Look, I have a fossil right here in my hand.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. Look, I'm holding it right here in my hand.
You're hallucinating.
I'm not hallucinating. It's a fossil.
Everybody knows it. It's so powerful. If we're going to get past the hallucination gambit.
That was silly. I mean, I have a blue wig somewhere. I'm not going to go look for it, though. Oh, well. Yeah. Anyways, you don't. Okay. Yeah, I get it. It's bad. It's not even an argument. Cool. So you do have evidence for your version of God, then, right? You're going to present that, right? So, at some point.
Gambit, we're going to need something more powerful than a one-off miracle.
Okay, cool.
I'm no scientist. I'm just some obscure novelist, but.
Oh, you've got books. Oh, okay. I've written books. I got 3 books, too. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to make them float on the screen because I'm doing this live, but I could do the next best thing, I guess. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned your books. I'm going to mention mine. It's only fair. Yeah. Let's see. We've got Logic and Morals. Okay. And then we've got, get out of here. We've got Caught Between an Infinite Hope and a Finite Despair. And we've got The Lightbringer. Yeah. Yeah, those are my 3 books. So, they're on Amazon and you can go get them. Anyways.
I think I have enough imagination to come up with the answer. And
Cool.
I'm pretty sure it at least has the potential to change the mind,
All right.
even of Richard Dawkins. I can
Okay.
only wonder why he didn't think of
Present it then.
but I suspect it's because he's so committed to the idea that there's nothing
just-
outside of
Come
nature
on.
that he didn't
Yeah.
put in
Okay,
enough
what is
effort
it? Come
to be
on.
creative.
Come on, tell us. What is it?
Is he right? Maybe, but let's
Uh-huh.
try this.
Okay.
There won't be any need for a light show or Paul Robeson's
okay.
booming
Here
voice
we go.
echoing from the sky,
All right.
no stars aligning into clever patterns.
Okay.
All we need is this: eternity.
What?
All God would have to do is place Professor Dawkins into a room so he can think about the possibility that there is a God. No pain, no hunger, no loneliness, no thirst, just a simple, neutral experience of existing.
Whatever. I mean, I don't know that would prove anything other than I'm now in a room where I exist, but yet God's not there. Why wouldn't God be in there with him? Like, hey, Dawkins, how's it going? It's so weird. What a weird thought experiment. All right, whatever. Okay. This wouldn't convince me, by the way, and be kind of boring. So what are you supposed to do? Sit there and think until you figure out the right answer? Doesn't seem very fair. Just give us the answer. All right, whatever.
Room forever. God will let him out once he comes up with the correct answer to this question. Have you been shown evidence of the existence of God?
Well, no, he hasn't. Because in that scenario, he wasn't given God. So the answer would be no. Weird.
Something that makes the possibility of God's existence more likely than it was before
Okay.
you experienced it. Now,
so tell us what that is. You have that, right? So why are you not telling us what that is?
when I said the word eternity, I can't help but wonder how many of you began to think about things like eternal damnation or other medieval concepts. That's not part of the proof I'm proposing, but it's worth asking. Why didn't we go all medieval on him? Well, there are two reasons. First, let's say we imagine some version of hell like Dante's Inferno.
All right. Enough with the imagining. Just tell us what the evidence is for God. Like, yeah, God could put you in a room for all eternity so that you think about stuff, I guess. Although you would not know that it was God because God isn't in the room with you. Seems kind of stupid to me. I mean, God, just be there and interact with me. That would probably be good evidence of God. I don't know.
Would that convince Dawkins? Probably not. One of the reasons Dante is still read 700 years later is because of his psychological insight. The torments inflicted on the damned in the Inferno didn't make any of them repent. Instead, it motivated them to find justifications and rationalizations for the evil they had chosen.
So I guess the conclusion is that torture doesn't work to change people's mind.
In the end, every single one of the damned believed they had good reasons for what they did.
I don't care.
Dawkins' hallucination dodge reminds me of Francesca.
Okay.
In the second,
All right. Just, are you ever gonna tell us what the evidence of God is? I mean,
to cling to his original viewpoint.
Well,
Dawkins really has come
no,
on
more.
just some account that's written in a history book.
Uh-huh.
It's a living reality we're all a part of.
Uh-huh.
So each year on Passover, we retell the story of the Exodus from Egypt.
Okay, the Exodus that there's no evidence of, that Exodus? Okay, yeah, I know you guys tell that story, but that doesn't make that story true. Why isn't there evidence of it? And your story isn't evidence. Your story is just a story.
After centuries of slavery, the children of Israel are beaten, broken, crying out for salvation. God has sent Moses to demand their release,
Yep.
promising to
Yeah, and many scholars basically don't think Moses was real at this point. So, I don't know. I don't believe Moses was real. I don't believe any of the stories in the Bible happened, or the Talmud or Torah or whatever. I don't believe that that stuff happened. It's just a story somebody made up. That's it. Maybe they got screwed over by the Egyptians and didn't like them, so they told a story about escaping from them. Or maybe they did escape, but they exaggerated the story and it got more exaggerated over time. I don't know. I don't care. It's just a story. But when you add the supernatural elements to it, it becomes mythology. And now I can't believe it because, well, it's got supernatural elements in it. And I could believe in the supernatural if I had any example of the supernatural at my disposal to test and retest, but I don't. So I can't believe in the supernatural because I have no example of it. So this isn't evidence, even by your own standards.
bring destruction in the form of 10 plagues if Pharaoh refuses.
Yeah.
I will harden Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah, God's kind of a jerk there.
Wait, what? If God wants Pharaoh to let the people go, why harden his heart?
Because the story doesn't make any sense. That's why.
Why make him more stubborn? Why make the mission harder? Is God taking away Pharaoh's free will just to inflict wanton cruelty on Pharaoh
Seems
and
like
the
it.
Egyptians? Or is something else going on?
Mm,
The answer can be found in the work of Rabbi Ovadiah.
yeah, some rabbi. Why should I care what some rabbi thinks? Why is that the answer? I don't care what some rabbi thinks is the answer. I don't even care what you think the answer is. I read it. Seems like God's being a jerk to me. So that's my conclusion. God was a big old jerk. Thankfully, it's just a character in a story and it's not real. And I don't care what the rabbi says. So this isn't evidence either. Actually, I think that'd be hearsay in the court.
Influential commentaries on the Torah.
I don't care.
According to Sforno,
Blah,
he told
blah.
Moses that he would bring plague after plague, not to destroy
Yeah. Okay. Does he ever get to evidence at all, or is he just, is this like
doing. Only out of fear. His
uh-huh.
repentance would have been fake.
Okay. So wait, but God already knows that Pharaoh's not going to repent. What's the point of any of it?
Sforno explains that to repent for not to punish him, but to
Okay. So this rabbi thinks that God did this to get Pharaoh to repent. Did Pharaoh repent?
finally trigger repentance in his heart. Pharaoh's heart wasn't hardened to block his free will. It was hardened to protect it. So now we'll put Richard Dawkins into that room. His free will intact, as much time as he needs, where it really exists. But Descartes took care of that one. Conclusion is inescapable. Here's the logic. All men are mortal. I don't.
Hey, he's actually giving an argument.
Dawkins am a man. With a finite time frame, say about 100 years, all mortal men die. I'm still alive after many eons, still experiencing stimuli. The conclusion follows. Something
Okay, mortal. I read that as moral for some reason. This is not a well-structured argumentation. That argument fails. You suck at arguments. You need to learn informal logic. Like, this doesn't follow. Like, you need to reformat this argument. Okay, all men are mortal. You don't need the next, and then if Dawkins is a man, Dawkins is more 3. So then you would reduce 4 to 3, or in fact you wouldn't even need it. But then to conclude that something is overriding mortality, but that doesn't necessarily mean that something is beyond natural laws, because if DNA is copying itself correctly, then we would live forever. But he would die of hunger and thirst. So he would still need that. And he'd still need stimuli to not go insane. So there has to be a lot of extra layers on your idea to justify the conclusion that it's something that can't be explained by natural phenomena. But God itself would work in the natural world using natural laws. It could rewrite my DNA so that I could live forever. It could make it so I don't have to eat or drink. It could do all sorts of things. In fact, it could prove itself. I gave it a way simpler task, but it won't do it. Why? Why won't God just levitate the lobster? That's all. Not that hard. Come on. Nope. Didn't happen. All right. Well, I guess God doesn't want to prove that it exists to me. Oh, well.
Thing beyond natural law is overriding mortality.
Yeah. So if I was not doing this live, I'd break down how wrong and broken this particular argument is that he's showing on screen. But basically, he's got too many premises, and the conclusion is a non sequitur.
Try as he might, that conclusion is inevitable.
No, it's actually non sequitur.
Any science. Let's say he was to argue that
Okay. I'm waiting for. He's got to have some sort of actual thing here that I could call evidence of God, right? Like, he's not just wasting my time. 16. Let's see. Come on, find it in the time. I don't want to waste any more time on this guy. I've already been here doing it an hour. It's more than enough. Just come on. Let's see. Free will, Pharaoh, whatever. Blah. Okay. All right. See. Okay. More talk about stories. Okay, so now he doesn't ever in this video offer anything that would be evidence of God, like actual evidence of God. This thought experiment is it, and the rest of the video it's just him talking about that thought experiment in greater detail over and over again. So there's nothing more here to see. All right, sir. If you have spent an hour plus listening to me respond to your video, come and join me for a judge. We will get a judge. We will host a mock trial. We will put God on trial. He is declared guilty of existence. You must prove that he is guilty. I will, of course, defend that he is innocent of existence as the defendant. And we'll see how that trial goes. But I don't think you would accept that challenge. I've given you several things that God could do to prove itself to me. I'm sure you have reasons why God won't do those things. What does it matter, though? Because anything I offer, you could just say, well, God won't give you that because X. Okay, what has God got for us then? What evidence is there for God? Present that. Let's see if it matches your criteria of evidence, as you stated earlier in this video. And if you cannot or will not, then you don't have an argument either. And your argument here was full of logical fallacies. So because of that, we have to be skeptical of your conclusions. Until next time, be skeptical. And after next time, stay skeptical. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments about what would prove that lobsters exist in the comments below. Should I say something about Jewish people? Oh, they can't eat lobsters. Ah, now that's a lie I can agree with.